Britain's two most recent world heavyweight champions are ex-IBF, WBA and WBO titleist Anthony Joshua and incumbent WBC king Tyson Fury. You'd be hard-pressed to find a boxing fan who'd pick Joshua over Fury as things currently stand. This isn't just down to the fact that Joshua has suffered defeats and Fury hasn't, it's the manner of those defeats, combined with the manner of some of Tyson Fury's victories. The Gypsy King has showed levels of confidence, mental strength, endurance and ring intelligence that AJ has never matched. Despite being dropped 6 times in his career, Tyson Fury has never looked lost or fearful in the ring. He's always been resourceful and defiant. If there's any heavyweight who you'd trust to find their way out of a crisis, it's him. He pulled out a stoppage win over John McDermott after a life and death struggle in their rematch, and he got off the floor to stop the likes of Nevin Pikage, Steve Cunningham, and Deontay Wilder. Furthermore, in his 2 successful title challenges against Vladimir Klitschko and the second Wilder fight, he won in dominant fashion. All of these elements combined give boxing fans a lot of confidence in his ability. Anthony Joshua, on the other hand, is a different story. While he did show defiance after being hurt in the first Dillian Whyte fight, he looked totally lost after Vladimir Klitschko dropped him a couple fights later, like a deer in the headlights. And never mind what the scorecard said, he was being completely outboxed. He did pull out the win in the 11th round, and credit to him for that, but at no time prior to that did he ever look in control. He got his nose busted and took too many shots for comfort in his next fight against Carlos Takam. He was hyper cautious against Joseph Parker in a fight where the ref inexplicably refused to allow any inside exchanges. He got rocked early on against Alexander Povetkin, and then of course after dropping Andy Ruiz in the 3rd round, he got dropped himself moments later and was beaten from pillar to post before being stopped in the 7th. Again, similar to the Klitschko fight, he looked like a deer in the headlights, totally lost. He did not know what to do. He did win the rematch with Ruiz, but looked scared throughout. He also looked anxious against Kubrat Pulev in his next fight. Then he suffered back-to-back points defeats to the much smaller, lighter punching Alexander Usyk, getting hurt and bullied at times along the way. Instead of imposing his size and will on Usyk, the way Fury did when he fought a smaller, more skillful boxer in Steve Cunningham, AJ cautiously stood off and allowed himself to be outboxed both times. Simply put, he has not shown the level of confidence, endurance, and resourcefulness in the ring that Tyson Fury has. However, despite being seen as a better fighter than Anthony Joshua, the Gypsy King isn't as popular a champion as AJ was. The reason for this has less to do with their records and more to do with their intentions. Anthony Joshua intended to be a throwback fighter. He tried to emulate those champions of old who ran through entire divisions and fought everyone. He fought Klitschko in his 19th fight when he didn't have to. He could have just sat back like Deontay Wilder did, milked his belt for years, and avoided Klitschko, but he didn't. He wanted to be better than that. AJ Klitschko wasn't just a defense of AJ's IBF title, it was also a unification because the vacant WBA belt was on the line. Wilder had the opportunity to fight Klitschko for that vacant WBA belt himself, but he chose not to. He chose to stay on the safe side of the ropes and watch at ringside while AJ did it instead. The more world title belts you accumulate, the more difficult it becomes to avoid tough opposition because you have more mandatories. AJ knew that, but he continued to unify anyway. He was set to face his mandatory challenger Kubrat Pulev next, but when Pulev pulled out, AJ agreed to fight the number 3 ranked contender Carlos Takam in a short notice voluntary defense instead. After that, he unified with Joseph Parker, yet another fight he didn't have to take. He then defeated another mandatory challenger in Alexander Povetkin. He then tried to unify with Deontay Wilder, yet another fight he did not have to pursue. He sent Wilder at least 3 offers over a period of roughly a year, the final one coming directly from DAZN for over $100 million. Incredibly, Deontay Wilder turned them all down. His excuse was that DAZN refused to disclose how much they were paying Joshua, which is an utterly absurd reason given the fact that his previous highest purse was only about $3 million. To put it in perspective, Alexander Usyk accepted a flat fee from the Saudis to fight Tyson Fury earlier this year, and this was while Fury was still negotiating his own deal. Usyk wasn't concerned with what Fury was being offered by the Saudis. He was happy with his own fee, so he accepted. But Wilder, in a similar situation, turned down over $100 million and the chance to become undisputed. Needless to say, he hasn't come close to making that kind of money for any fight since. AJ then moved on to make a voluntary defense. He first offered it to Dillian Whyte, but Whyte turned it down. Unbeaten Jarrell Miller was offered the fight, but he got popped for PEDs. Then Luis Ortiz was offered the fight for a career-high purse, but he turned it down. Unbeaten Adam Kaunaki was offered the fight for a career-high purse too, but he turned it down as well. Then finally, Andy Ruiz was offered the fight, having just come off a win literally 10 days earlier, and he accepted. Every single one of those fighters were highly ranked, in some cases unbeaten, and were all offered career-high purses, which shows how serious AJ was about fighting them. Ruiz was the only one who accepted. He took the fight and he won. AJ got revenge in the rematch, of course, then beat Kubrat Pulev in another mandatory defense. He then tried to fight Tyson Fury in a unification in 2020. He signed for it. It was Fury who pulled out after losing a court case to Deontay Wilder. AJ then went straight into another mandatory with Alexander Usyk, which he obviously lost, and the rest is history. AJ ultimately failed at the top level. He is not the best heavyweight in the world, clearly, but he gets respect from the public, not so much for the champion he was, but for the champion he tried to be. He unified at the earliest opportunity, he tried to make undisputed on several occasions, he fought all his mandatories, and he targeted tough opposition even for voluntary defenses. Tyson Fury, on the other hand, is a very, very, very different type of champion. Whereas Anthony Joshua was the type of champion who continuously took risks when he didn't have to, Tyson Fury is the type of champion who only takes risks when he's forced to. He had to take a risk in order to win a title in the first place, of course. But once he became champion, all he's done is go for low-hanging fruit. He wasn't a world champion in 2019, but he was running around calling himself champion with all this lineal nonsense. Dylan White, who was a highly ranked contender and on a very impressive run of form at the time, challenged him to a fight. Fury accepted on the proviso that the WBC Diamond Belt was on the line. The WBC agreed, only for Fury to back out and fight the unknown and much lower ranked Tom Schwartz and Otto Wallin instead. And he sold those fights as world title defenses on pay-per-view. That type of thing doesn't go down well with the public. When he made his first real title defense as a real champion about 2 years later, it was a pre-contracted rematch with Deontay Wilder. Again, he had no choice. Wilder had triggered a rematch clause. And lest we forget, 6 months prior to that, Fury and his team assured everyone that Wilder had no case and that he was free to unify with AJ. But given the fact that Bob Arum is a lawyer and neither he nor Frank Warren lifted a finger to try and make the AJ fight, leaving all of the work to Eddie Hearn, it's perfectly reasonable to suppose that they knew the AJ fight had very little chance of happening right from the start, but they were just happy to string everyone along while they tried to drum up money for the Wilder trilogy. Much of the public suspected that to be the case, hence the backlash against Fury when he pulled out. He went on to beat Wilder in October 2021 before ducking a unification with Usyk in early 2022 by demanding a completely unnecessary tune-up fight. He then fought a mandatory in Dylan White, another fight he was forced to take. He then did a fake retirement and demanded $500 million to come back and fight Usyk. When he ended his fake retirement a few weeks later, he tried to fight a mentally shot AJ coming off back-to-back losses. You've got 15 fighters to choose from in the WBC rankings. Most of them are coming off wins. Some of them are unbeaten. But instead, you pick a guy coming off 2 losses? What kind of champion does that? Fury's first true voluntary defense was his trilogy fight against the washed-up Derek Chisora, who was ranked about 13 at the time. Think about all the more highly ranked contenders he skipped over just to pick Del Boy at the bottom of the list. He then ducked Usyk again by pricing himself out, stringing the whole world along for 6 months in the process over a fight he had no intention of taking, all while lining up this Mickey Mouse fight with Francis Ngannou behind the scenes. And he's been lying to the public about it non-stop ever since. He says he attempted to make a voluntary defense this summer, but claims that Andy Ruiz priced himself out. Given Fury's own history of pricing himself out of fights, who do you believe? Frank Sanchez and Martin Bakole are both highly ranked contenders and both made themselves available for a fight with Fury this summer. But of course, the Gypsy King ignored them and chose to fight a man who's never had a boxing match before instead. That is literally the exact opposite of what Anthony Joshua was doing when he was champion. Again, AJ offered title shots to Dylan White, unbeaten Jarrell Miller, Luis Ortiz, Andy Ruiz, unbeaten Adam Kaunaki, and an unbeaten Tyson Fury, and all of those offers were for for career high paydays as well. He initially offered Luis Ortiz $6 million, then upped it to $7 million. Ortiz's previous career high purse was only about $1 million. He was being offered 7 times his career highest purse to fight AJ. If Fury was to behave in the same fashion, then the equivalent would be fighting Alexander Usyk at the earliest opportunity, then defending against people like Frank Sanchez, Martin Bakole, Makhmudov, Hrgovic, etc. And not only that, but offering them all career high paydays to show that he's serious. And again, Sanchez and Bakole both publicly said they were available to fight Fury this summer. But of course, Fury hasn't offered either of them a penny. And then Frank Warren has the audacity to run around claiming that no one wants to fight Fury, which is such a colossal lie. It's a wonder he didn't dislocate his jaw when it came out of his mouth. This is why, despite Tyson Fury being a better fighter than Anthony Joshua in the eyes of most people, showing a better chin, better stamina, more confidence, higher ring IQ, and so on, he isn't as popular a champion. Because as much as AJ was a limited champion, he was an honest one. He failed in his attempt to fight and beat everyone, but he tried, and the British public appreciated that. Whereas with Tyson Fury, as much as he's a gifted champion, he's an extremely dishonest one. Rather than trying to fight and beat all the best heavyweights, he tries to con the public at virtually every turn instead, and that puts people off. They say that winning isn't everything, and when you compare who was the more popular champion out of AJ and Fury, I guess you have to say that's true. Honest intentions go a long way as well. Are you sick and tired of the mainstream mindset? Does the dogmatic conformity and pathological ignorance have you tearing your hair out in frustration? Then don't be alone. Come and join our brotherhood on Patreon. We stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. You'll gain access to my weekly topical podcast where we take more deep dives than Jacques Cousteau on an endless variety of subjects. There's also videos, interviews, live Q&As, as well as a vast back catalogue of previous episodes, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen via the Patreon app or download in high-quality MP3. Connect with myself and hundreds of other members in our Element chat group. There's no contract, no commitment, you can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a Mickey D's McMuffin. Just head to my Patreon page via the link below this video and select the tier called the Brotherhood of Reason. I'll see you over there.